I found out my parents had been stealing from me for 15 years when I opened that inheritance letter. Not borrowing. Stealing. From their own daughter. The golden child who could do no wrong. Until I discovered I was funding my brother's entire life while working 3 jobs just to survive. Before we dive into this story, please hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments if you've ever felt like the family scapegoat. Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. My name is Sarah, and for 32 years, I believed I was the problem child. The difficult one. The one who never quite measured up to my younger brother Marcus, who was, well, perfect. At least according to my parents. Marcus got straight A's without trying. I studied until 2 a.m. and barely scraped by with B's. Marcus was naturally athletic, captain of the football team, dated the homecoming queen. I was invisible. The girl who worked at the local diner after school while Marcus went to practice. You know how some families have that one kid who can do no wrong? That was Marcus. And I was the other one. The one who always seemed to disappoint, no matter how hard I tried. I remember being 14, coming home with a report card full of B's and 1 A- in English. I was so proud of that English grade. I'd worked harder on that class than anything in my life. My mom barely glanced at it. Marcus got all A's again, she said, not even looking up from her magazine. Maybe you should ask him to help you study. That night, I heard them talking in the kitchen. My parents. About college funds. About how Marcus would need money for his applications, his SAT prep, his future. Sarah will figure it out, my dad said. She's resourceful. Marcus needs our investment more. I was 17 when I started working at Joe's Diner. Not because I wanted spending money like other kids. Because I needed to save for college. My parents made it clear that Marcus's education came first. He had potential. I had determination, but apparently that wasn't worth investing in. While Marcus got a new car for his 18th birthday, I bought myself a used Honda with 200,000 miles on it using money I'd saved from serving coffee and burgers to truckers and locals. While Marcus got his college tuition paid in full, I took out loans and work-study programs. While Marcus got his first apartment deposit covered, I lived in a studio apartment above a pizza shop, eating ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. But here's the thing about being the forgotten child. You become incredibly self-reliant. You learn to count on yourself, because no one else will. By 25, I'd graduated college debt-free through sheer willpower and exhaustion. By 30, I owned my own small marketing consultancy. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Marcus? Marcus bounced from job to job, always with some excuse. The boss didn't appreciate his talents. The company culture wasn't right. He needed time to find himself. And somehow, my parents always had money to help him through these transitional periods. 3 months ago, everything changed when my grandmother passed away. Grandma Rose had always been different with me. While my parents barely acknowledged my achievements, she celebrated every small victory. When I graduated college, she took me out to dinner. When I started my business, she sent me a card with $50 and a note that said, "For the granddaughter who never gives up." I loved her, but I'll be honest. I didn't expect anything in her will. The golden child always gets the inheritance, right? That's how these stories go. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and disappointment. I'd only gone because Marcus couldn't make it. He was dealing with some things according to my mom. So I sat there, expecting to sign some paperwork and leave. "Sarah," the lawyer said, "your grandmother left you her house and a substantial portion of her savings. Approximately $450,000 total." I actually laughed. Out loud. Because surely this was a mistake. Golden children get inheritances. Problem children get. Well, they get told to figure it out themselves. But then he handed me the letter. In Grandma Rose's handwriting. "My dearest Sarah," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and it's time you knew the truth about your parents and that money you've been sending them." Money I've been sending them? What money? My hands started shaking as I kept reading. "Every month for the past 15 years, your parents have been taking money from the savings account I set up for you when you were born. They told me it was for your education, then your living expenses, then to help you get started in business. I found out 6 months ago that none of that money ever reached you. It all went to Marcus." The room started spinning. The lawyer was still talking, but his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "The account was set up so your parents could access it for your needs until you turned 35. They've withdrawn over $200,000 over the years. I confronted them last month. They promised to tell you the truth. Since you're hearing this from me instead of them, I know they never did." $200,000. Money that was mine. Money that could have paid for college, could have helped me start my business, could have... God, how many 60-hour weeks could I have avoided? How many nights did I fall asleep at my desk because I couldn't afford to turn down work? I called my parents from the parking lot of the law office. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. "Mom, we need to talk. About Grandma Rose's will. About the money." There was silence. Then my mother's voice, suddenly very small. "What money, sweetheart?" "The $200,000 you've been taking from my account for 15 years. More silence. Then I heard her talking to my dad in the background, muffled but urgent. "Sarah, honey, we can explain." Can you? Can you explain why you let me work 3 jobs through college while you were spending my money on Marcus? Can you explain why I ate ramen for dinner for 2 years while he lived in that nice apartment you helped him pay for?" It's not what you think. But it was exactly what I thought. Over the next hour, the truth came out in pieces. Marcus had been struggling financially for years. Every time he lost a job, every time he made a bad decision, my parents bailed him out. With my money. The money my grandmother had saved for me since I was a baby. The car they bought him when his credit was too bad to get a loan? My money. The deposit on his current apartment? My money. The business he tried to start last year that failed within 6 months? You guessed it. We were going to pay it back, my mom kept saying. Marcus needed help, and you were doing so well on your own. Because I had to. I finally screamed into the phone. Because you made it clear that I was on my own. Do you have any idea what those years were like for me? That's when my dad got on the phone. His voice had that edge it always got when he was about to lecture me about being difficult. "Sarah, family helps family. Marcus has had a harder time adjusting to adulthood. You've always been more independent. We knew you could handle it." Independent. Their word for, "We don't want to deal with your problems." "Where is Marcus now?" I asked. He's having a hard time right now. He just got laid off again and you're planning to give him more of my money." Silence. I hung up. That night, I sat in my small apartment, looking at bank statements and doing math. If I'd had that money when I needed it, I could have graduated without the stress that gave me panic attacks. I could have started my business years earlier. I could have lived like a human being instead of a machine designed to work and survive. But here's what really broke me. I called Marcus. "Hey sis," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Mom said you got some inheritance. That's awesome. Grandma Rose always liked you best." "Marcus, did you know about the money?" "What money?" I told him. Everything. The account, the withdrawals, the 15 years of funding his life while I scraped by. There was a long pause. Then Sarah, I thought they were just helping me out. I didn't know it was your money. I swear I didn't know. But you never questioned it? You never wondered why they always had money for you, but never for me. Another pause. Longer this time. I guess I just thought they believed in me more. That they saw my potential. And there it was. The golden child mentality so ingrained that he genuinely believed he deserved more, because he was more valuable. He wasn't malicious. He was just entitled. Completely, utterly entitled. "Marcus, I worked 3 jobs in college. I lived on peanut butter sandwiches. I drove a car that broke down twice a month. While you were finding yourself, I was building a business from nothing. I know you worked hard, Sarah, but what? But you're good at that stuff. You're good at working hard. It comes naturally to you." I actually laughed. Because that's when I realized he genuinely believed that my success came easily to me. That I was somehow naturally gifted at struggling, at sacrificing, at making something from nothing, while his failures were just bad luck that required family support. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers and accountants. Turns out, my parents had been so confident in their financial manipulation that they'd kept detailed records. Every withdrawal, every loan to Marcus, every lie they told me about why they couldn't help with my education. My lawyer was clear. I had grounds for a lawsuit. I could get that money back with interest. I could make them face real consequences. But here's what nobody tells you about family betrayal. Sometimes the victory feels emptier than the injustice. I didn't sue them. Instead, I did something that hurt them more than any court judgment could. I disappeared from their lives. Not dramatically. Not with screaming matches or ultimatums. I just stopped. Stopped calling on holidays. Stopped sending birthday cards. Stopped showing up to family dinners where I was treated like an afterthought. Marcus tried calling a few times. Come on, Sarah, they're family. We need to work this out. We. I said. There is no we in this situation, Marcus. There's you, the golden child who got everything handed to him. And there's me, the daughter whose inheritance funded your lifestyle. We were never on the same team. The hardest part wasn't the anger. The hardest part was the relief. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to perform for people who would never see my worth. I didn't have to compete with a golden child who was destined to win simply by existing. 6 months later, my business has tripled in size. I bought a house. A real house, with a garden and a kitchen where I cook actual meals instead of surviving on whatever was cheapest. I've traveled to places I only dreamed about when I was working 7 days a week just to pay rent. And Marcus? Last I heard, he's living back home with my parents. At 31 years old. Still finding himself, and waiting for the next handout. My parents call sometimes. I don't answer. They leave voicemails saying they want to work things out, and that family is more important than money. But they never say they're sorry. They never acknowledge what they did to me. They just want things to go back to the way they were, where I pretended to be grateful for scraps while they fed my brother steaks. Here's what I learned about being the family scapegoat. Sometimes the family needs you to be the problem so they don't have to face their own failures. If I was the difficult one, then Marcus's constant need for rescue wasn't enabling. If I was the one who didn't need help, then their favoritism wasn't neglect. But the truth is, I wasn't difficult. I was just inconvenient. My success despite their neglect made their golden child look ordinary by comparison. My independence highlighted their son's dependence. The final twist came last month when I got a Facebook message from Marcus's ex-girlfriend, Jennifer. We'd never been close, but her message changed everything. Sarah, I don't know if you want to hear from me, but I thought you should know. Marcus told me everything about the money, but he didn't tell you everything. She wanted to meet for coffee. I almost said no, but something in her message made me curious. Jennifer was nervous when we met, fidgeting with her coffee cup and avoiding eye contact. Marcus and I dated for 3 years, she began. I broke up with him 6 months ago when I found out about his gambling problem. Gambling problem? He's been gambling online for years. Poker, sports betting, crypto trading. Your parents knew. They've been covering his debts because they're terrified he'll lose everything and end up. Well, they're terrified of what he might do. The blood drained from my face. How much? As far as I know, over $300,000 in the past 5 years alone. Your inheritance money, your grandmother's money, money your parents borrowed against their house. Sarah, they're broke. They've been broke for years. I sat there in stunned silence as Jennifer told me about Marcus's addiction, about the threats from creditors, about my parents' desperate attempts to keep him afloat financially while he spiraled deeper into debt. They never told you because they knew you'd stop helping. And they needed you to stay successful so they could. Well, so they could eventually ask you for money too. That's when it all clicked. The reason they never apologized. The reason they kept calling. They weren't trying to repair our relationship out of love. They were planning to use my inheritance to bail out their golden child one more time. I thanked Jennifer and drove home in a daze. That evening, I finally called my parents. Sarah. My mom's voice was bright, hopeful. I'm so glad you called. We've been thinking about you so much. I know about Marcus's gambling debts. The silence was deafening. I know you're broke. I know you've borrowed against the house. And I know you were planning to ask me for money. My father cleared his throat. Sarah, we're family. Marcus is sick. He needs help and we can't do this alone anymore. You're right, I said. You can't. But I can't help you either. But the inheritance, surely you can. The inheritance that should have been mine 15 years ago? The money you stole from me to enable an addiction you hid from me? That money. Sarah, please. He's your brother. No, I said, and I meant it. A brother wouldn't have let you steal from me for 15 years. A brother would have questioned why his sister was struggling while he lived comfortably. A brother would have said thank you at the very least. I paused, thinking about all those years of feeling like I wasn't enough, like I was the problem, like I deserved less. I spent 32 years thinking I was the broken one in this family. Turns out I was the only one who wasn't broken. I was just surrounded by people who needed me to believe I was less than them, so they could avoid dealing with their own problems. Sarah, if you don't help us, we might lose the house. Then you'll finally understand what it feels like to struggle without a safety net. Something I've been doing my entire adult life while funding your golden child's gambling addiction. I hung up and turned off my phone. 3 weeks later, I was in Hawaii. My first real vacation ever. I was sitting on a beach, reading a book and drinking something with an umbrella in it, when I realized something profound. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was free. Free from the burden of trying to earn love from people who were incapable of giving it. Free from the exhaustion of competing in a rigged game. Free from the guilt of never being enough for people who needed me to be less, so they could feel better about their choices. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Marcus. Sarah, I'm in rehab. Finally getting help. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better from all of us. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to build a bridge, to try again. But I'd learned something important about bridges. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let them stay burned. Some relationships aren't worth rebuilding. Some families are too toxic to heal. And sometimes the best thing you can do for everyone involved is to walk away and build a life that doesn't require their approval to be meaningful. I finished my drink, watched the sunset, and deleted the message. 6 months later, my business hit 7 figures. I bought my dream house. I'm dating someone who thinks my independence is attractive, not threatening. I have friends who celebrate my successes instead of diminishing them. I have a life built on my own terms, funded by money that was always meant to be mine. And my parents? They lost the house. Marcus is still in treatment, but from what I hear through mutual friends, he's actually making progress. My parents are renting a small apartment and learning to live within their means for the first time in decades. I don't feel guilty about their struggles. I don't feel responsible for their consequences. I feel nothing. And that's the most peaceful nothing I've ever experienced. Sometimes people ask me if I miss my family. Here's the truth. I miss the family I thought I had. The family where love wasn't conditional on being less successful than the golden child. The family where my achievements mattered as much as my brother's excuses. The family where I was valued for who I was, not tolerated despite who I was. But that family never existed. I was just pretending it did for 32 years. The real family was the one where I was systematically robbed and gaslight, and told I was being difficult when I asked for basic fairness. The real family was the one that needed me to fail so their favorite could succeed. I don't miss that family at all. Here's what I want you to remember if you're the scapegoat in your family. Your worth isn't determined by people who benefit from undervaluing you. Your success doesn't require their approval. Your happiness doesn't need their participation. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop trying to earn love from people who are fundamentally incapable of giving it freely. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's growing up. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments about your own golden child experience.